Hello, a warm welcome. It's a great pleasure to receive you for this 3-day program on one world, one humanity, one future. Two main ideas are pervading in structuring our conferences. To initiate a worldwide conversation on the future of our children, ignited by the wisdom and expertise of our invited speakers. Doing together, we believe that a continuous collaboration among organizations, networks, movements can co-create a potent and sustained field for transforming action. Worldwide conversation is a medium to activate global learning processes and to develop a shared vision and shared lines of action. Working together is the great test. The examination will need to pass to build a lasting peace. For today's sessions, we are very pleased to hear from Futurist, scientist, writer, international speaker, who 4 years ago brought up the concept of the global brain. He anticipates the global interconnectedness through electronic devices, softwares and networks that speed up in the last decades. LOREN SPÍNDOLA, who kindly accepted our invitation to join the conference. She is Microsoft Brazil public policy lead, and she's helping us in this session to reflect on the social impact of technology. We are experiencing the exponential increase of human power generated by technology, making it possible to implement faster and effective solutions for the core urgencies humanity is facing. Many possibilities, increased responsibilities, and especially for the main actors, the tech industries, government, civil society, to find cooperative ways to implement them. And VAFA AKHAVAN is the CEO of the World Pediatric Project. He is sharing with us a very touching example of how the possibilities opened by the advancement of technology, combining with the qualities of the heart, can create effective solutions for cases of great complexity, assisting vulnerable children in many areas of the world. We are very thankful to VAFA, LOREN, and Peter. I wish we all a very inspiring session.
Hello, very nice to be with you, even if virtually, not be able to attend in person like I have done at previous conferences. But anyway, what I'd like to talk about in this session is really looking at the global brain back then when it started, when I started thinking about it, and where it is today. So this is sort of the global brain back then and 40 years on, or even 50 years on, really, because I first started thinking about the idea of a global brain back in the 70s. And it came about for several reasons. One, I just completed a postgraduate degree in computer science at the University of Cambridge, and I was fascinated by computers, but also I saw the very, very beginning of networking of computers. We had a huge computer upstairs occupying a whole floor and a smaller computer downstairs occupying a room. We had a huge cable coming down, and I was working on the linking of the two computers, getting them to speak to each other. And what I saw back then was that the future of computing wasn't just getting bigger and faster computers, but it was also about the networking of computers, joining computers together. And the insight I had was, like, this is going to happen across the planet. We're going to be linking together through computer networks, much the same way as the brain develops in the womb. And what happens in the womb, just very, very briefly, is in the first 3 months is this massive proliferation of nerve cells. And then basically you have most of the nerve cells for the rest of your life. And then it's the connecting together of the nerve cells that leads to increased intelligence, creativity, and all the factors we associate with the human mind. So I could see that the population of humanity is still growing, but beginning to stabilize. And the next stage is the linking together of humanity through these computer networks in a global brain. And at the same time, James Lovelock, a British chemist, had come up with the idea of the Gaia hypothesis, Gaia being the Greek name for the Mother Earth goddess. And he was suggesting if you look at the whole of the biosphere, the whole of the living systems on Earth, including the atmosphere, the soil, the oceans, the whole thing seems to function like one single living organism. And the question that came up for me then is, okay, what's humanity doing here? We're this young upstart on the planet. It's been functioning for billions of years as this organism, and suddenly in a brief flash of cosmic time, we're here. What are we doing? What function do we have? And on the pessimistic side is, well, maybe we're a global cancer with some sort of virus or something. But then on the other side is maybe we are the brain of the planet, because what humans are good at is information processing. We are the information processors. That limited, we are like the nerve cells of the planet. And at the same time, I'd been reading a lot of Teilhard de Chardin, who was saying, if you look at evolution, we've been through the evolution of the physical Earth. We've then been through what he called the geosphere. We've then been through the evolution of life, the creation of the biosphere. And now he saw the next stage in evolution was the evolution of mind across the planet, the noosphere. And so he was talking about some collective consciousness emerging. And that again tied in with what I was looking at. And then finally, I'd at this stage just come back from spending some time in India with the Maharishi, and that was a very important time for me. And what I saw then so clearly was wherever we're going in the future, the awakening of consciousness is absolutely important. The values we have, the ways we think about things, all our problems are basically coming back to the human consciousness. So we need to awaken human consciousness as well. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a little while. So that was really what started me interested in the global brain. And I wrote my book, The Global Brain, what's called The Awakening Earth in England and The Global Brain in America. I forget what it's called now in Brazil, but anyway. And then I produced the video of it, which actually took the idea out further than any book could have done. It was being shown in schools and through various meetings, conferences. And I think that's what really got the idea out, was my video, The Global Brain, which was actually made 40 years ago, not today, but 40 years ago this year. And since then, the last 40 years, we've seen incredible, unbelievable growth in the linking of humanity. Back then, we were all thinking about, computer networks as data driven, just exchanging numbers, data, that was it. No one saw, the World Wide Web coming along. No one saw that then. And then no one saw we'd be using it for images, for videos, for streaming movies, for social media, for online shopping. I mean, today, the internet, the World Wide Web is they're in our lives nearly all the time in one way or another, or on the phones. I mean, just how much do we use our phones, and how much of that is actually accessing the internet in one way or another? So 40 years on, it's happening. The global brain is really, really evolving. And it's evolving faster and faster because, as some of you may know, the technology is just expanding so fast. Computer systems, their power, their efficiency is probably doubling every 18 months, which means, maybe in a few years from now, maybe at the end of this decade, we'll have computers that are as smart as human beings. And when that happens, it'll go even faster. And so who knows where we'll be in 10 years' time in terms of the evolution of the global brain. So this is sort of an intermediate update. But that possibility of us really linking together, not only linking our minds together, but because we are really communicating with each other, linking our hearts together, that I think is what is going to be so, so important. And almost probably even more important is actually bringing about the full conscious awakening of humanity. And 50 years ago, the interest in this area in sort of spiritual awakening was very small. I remember at Cambridge, in my local library, my local bookstore rather, there was one shelf about this long of books on other religions other than Christianity and Islam and the classic ones. Now you go into any town and you'll find bookstores devoted to this. Thousands and thousands of books, all coming from us all learning from each other, discovering things in ourselves, reading other books, watching videos, learning from the internet. And so this is also growing exponentially. And now the bookstores are not only full of books, but videos and audios and so many other ways to help us in our awakening. And so all this positive feedback means it's growing faster and faster and faster. So now it's become almost mainstream. I mean, big companies are now very proud of the fact they actually include meditation instruction for their employees. When I was back then, companies didn't want to know about it. They were embarrassed if I was teaching meditation to them. They said, don't let anybody know, don't let anybody know, But, we believe in it. And the other thing that's happening is more and more and more of us are actually waking up. Not to say we're fully enlightened, but we're waking up. And so the more people that are waking up, the more we can share others, the more we can teach others. I mean, there's so many courses on meditation, spirituality, awakening now. All of this coming just through this exponential growth of awakening amongst the general population. So I'd just like to really finish by saying a few words about what I mean by awakening, because this is the most important thing really, is how do we each further our own awakening or help others to awaken. So if we're talking about awakening, we're talking about not awakening from sleep so much, but awakening from dreams. Well, I think most of the time we actually live in a dream world or dreamlike world, daydreaming. By this I mean, so much of the time, if you look at what's going on in your mind, you're engaged in some thought or other. I call them stories. Something that's going on, something you're following, something you're thinking about. Maybe it's, what's going to happen tomorrow? Do I need to do this? What will I say if I meet so-and-so? Or will it rain? What's the temperature going to be? Oh, I must get on with this work or whatever it is. And we then get planning what we're going to do, or we start thinking about yesterday, did I do the right thing? Or that was wonderful. The point is, most of the time we end up in some story or other. And if we're caught up in some story, if our attention is caught up in what we're thinking, what we're telling ourselves, first of all, we're not in the present moment. We're in some future or past scenario. So we're not in the present moment. And that thinking, in a way, it both hides the present moment from us, it veils the present moment, but also it takes us out of our natural mind. And by natural mind, I mean how the mind is when we're not caught up in worry, anxiety, planning, what ifing, if only, etc. When we're not caught up in that, the natural mind is actually one of ease and contentment. That's where we naturally are when we don't disturb it with all our concerns and worries, etc. So all our thinking actually takes us out of the natural mind, because most of our thinking is about some concern, anxiety, or excitement or other. So when we let go of the thinking, and this is really what meditation is about, is when we let go of the thinking, we come back to the present moment, but also, as importantly, we come back to a state of ease. And one of the practices that I like to leave people with is a very, very simple one. I just call it pausing, which means any time in the day, whenever you think about it, just notice what you're thinking, notice where your mind has gone, and just choose just to pause it for now. just for a moment or two, that's all. And just notice when you pause, you'll notice two things. You'll begin to notice the present moment again. Ah, there's that bird song out there, or there's this, or whatever it is, or even just the sound of something in the room, the refrigerator or something. But you'll also notice a sense of deeper ease and contentment. And that's really important, because if we're living from that, if we're living from that sense of ease and contentment, we don't need to be doing all the things we do to chase contentment. So much of what we do, so much of our thinking is about how can we be content in the future. The more we are content in the present, the less we need to be caught up in all that thinking. And we're going to be so much not only happier, that contentment means we're going to be healthier, we're going to be able to be a better service to others. And the more that this contentment is there in the world, the better we are going to be as a society. I mean, just imagine what a society would be like if we're not caught up in fear and worry and all of that and doing things, trying to be happy. Then we could actually be a much more caring and compassionate society. And that's the direction I see us moving. And hopefully, as the global brain just races ahead and becomes more and more mature, we'll be able to use it to help each other just wake up, to step back from all that thinking, etc., to wake up, to come back to actually knowing who we really are, knowing our true nature. So that is my wish for each of you and for the world in general. So thank you for this opportunity to speak to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is LOREN Spíndola. I'm Brazilian. I work at Microsoft as public policy lead for Brazil, and I'm a mother of 3 kids. Well, I fell in love with technology and its power to change the world. And I'm really lucky to work in a company that shares the same values and purpose. And not only that, I'm really lucky to work in an industry and a sector that drives technology for good. Microsoft has long strived to be a leader in doing well by doing good. But as the needs and expectations of our stakeholders and communities increase, we believe we can and should rise to meet them. And if we work together, we can create a more inclusive, equitable, sustainable, and trusted future for everyone, especially our children. The reality is that we are living in a changed world. We continue to confront massive and compounding challenges, including health, economic, and humanitarian crises, persistent issues of systemic racial injustice and inequity, and the devastating effects of climate change. Accelerated by COVID-19, rapid advances in technology are drastically changing how people live, work, and learn. Digital transformation that should have taken 10 years is here today. And while there is great potential for technology to help address society's biggest issues, the rapid pace of this change is also raising new challenges and intensifying existing inequities in our communities. COVID-19 has created an ongoing global health and economic crisis that is disproportionately impacting our most vulnerable communities. Access to economic opportunity is far from being equitable. On top of this, recent events have highlighted the persistent needs to address long-standing racial injustice and to defend democracy around the world. We must protect fundamental rights from all people, ensuring technology protects and empowers everyone and exploits no one. And as other challenges grow and persist, so too does the climate change. Addressing climate change is the defining issues of our generation. Now is the time for urgent action, especially if we want our children to have a safe future. Trust in technologies and companies behind them continue to erode. It is critical that we apply technology and innovations to address these challenges without sacrificing core values like trust, privacy, transparency, and inclusion. And in face of the world's pressing challenges and extraordinary opportunities, we believe that companies that can do more should do more. While Microsoft's mission is to empower every person and organization in the planet to achieve more, and this mission has never been more relevant and pressing. And we have both an enormous opportunity and responsibility to ensure that the technology we create benefits everyone on the planet, including the planet itself. To help people, organizations, and communities everywhere to achieve more, we need to ensure that economic opportunity is inclusive for every country, developed and in developing, every community, urban and rural, every business, small and large, and every person, including the 1 billion plus people with disability and other underserved communities across the globe. We must support the fundamental rights of all people, from addressing systemic racial injustice and inequity to defending democracy, to protecting human rights around the world. We must address climate change for a more sustainable future. A healthy society requires a healthy planet. That's why we must lead the way on sustainability while enabling others to use technology to create and achieve their goals. Finally, well, if people don't trust the technology or the companies behind them, progress is not possible. That's why every day we strive to earn the trust of the communities we serve and the governments that represent them through a commitment to privacy, cybersecurity, digital safety, responsibly AI, and transparency. We pursue those commitments not only through the product and service we develop, but with the policies and practices that govern our world. Passion and dedication of our employees and the causes and communities we invest in around the world. But we cannot do it alone. The issues facing people and the planet are complex, and no one company, sector, or even country can solve them alone. That's why we must work across sectors with other business, governments, NGOs, academics, and change markets to foster partnerships and solutions that will have lasting impact. Because each of us must commit to do more for us of all to achieve more. Well, economic opportunity should be inclusive for every country, every community, every organization, and every person. And this starts with increasing access to technology, digital skills, and data, and extends to how we promote accessibility and support public health. Technology can change lives, but only if people have access to it. And we must work to increase equitable access to broadband, technology, skills, and data to deliver more opportunity for people and communities to thrive in an increasingly digital world. Well, the World Economic Forum estimates that by 2025, 97 million new roles may emerge, while 85 million jobs may be displaced by machines and algorithms. While automation have already set the trend in motion, while the pandemic have accelerated it. Millions of people will need to learn new skills to be able to get or keep their jobs in a more digital economy. And our children must learn those skills as soon as possible to be included in the digital economy. To close the skills gap, we need to invest in programs and partnerships to build foundational digital skills, provide access to high-quality, inclusive computer science education, and equip people with cybersecurity and AI skills. Nearly half of the global population doesn't have access to internet. Broadband already powers much of our modern lives. Well, the pandemic has driven many more essential activities online. We now learn, have services, our commerce, most workplaces, and daily interactions require a high-speed connection to the internet. There are more than 1 billion people on the planet with some form of disability. but only 1 in 10 has access to accessible products and services they need. The unemployment rate for people with disability is typically twice that of people without it. People with disability need inclusive workplaces, products, and services to be able to fully participate and thrive at work, school, and daily life. And technology can help on this. And it's just amazing to see different stories of children being able to listen for the first time or being able to communicate for the first time with the assistance of AI and different technologies. And also how they can be socially included using video games to provide a social and friendly environment for those kids. But of course, the numbers alone don't tell the full stories. And we know that the real goal of this work is changing lives. And together we can do more. But we also know how important it is to ensure that the policy environment supports the work needed to expand economic opportunity for everyone. And these are humbling challenges that require sustained efforts. And of course, we don't have all the answers, but we are committed to listening and learning, and we hope our contributions and learnings will be useful to others. Well, climate change is the defining issue of our generation, and addressing it requires swift, collective action and technical innovation. And the scientific consensus is clear. The climate crisis cannot wait. An issue as big and as urgent as climate change will require all of us to do our part to build a resilient and sustainable future. Again, those who can do more and move fast should. And I am optimistic about the benefits of technology, yet also clear-eyed about the challenges. To drive positive impact with technology, people need to be able to trust the technologies and the companies behind them. And that's why we must take our responsibility to earn trust seriously. Well, and at Microsoft, this commitment is not new in most of the companies. But as technology rapidly evolves and impacts all of us, we know there is more we can do. And as an industry, we have created technology that we hope breaks down boundaries. But unfortunately, some use online platforms to bring out the darker side of humanity. And we've created different solutions like Digital Safety Office in 2019 to integrate safety by design across Microsoft products and services. Advanced digital safety law and public policy consistent with free, open, and secure internet globally and promote digital civility. And while digital safety is important for all of us, it is especially important that we protect our children online and offline. And that's why we've joined with other technology companies to bolster industry efforts towards eradicating online child sexual exploitation and abuse. It will take many actors coming together in a responsible and principled approach to ensure technology is developed and used responsibly. Well, but we do take our responsibility as a technology leader and innovator seriously. And in this time of rapid change, we can't move ahead without considering the impact of new technology on people, organization, and society. We also understand the value of partnership, learning from one another, being transparent, and most importantly, backing our words with action. And this is not just our responsibility, it's our mission. And it's time to take bold steps forward to address our most pressing challenges. And we must do that to ensure that our kids will have a safe and healthy future. Together we can achieve more. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. My name is VAFA AKHAVAN, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of World Pediatric Project. I wanted to thank the organizers of this conference for all of their effort in bringing us together around a subject that is particularly important for the future of humanity, which has to do with the future of our children. And also for extending this invitation for me to share some thoughts on the subject, particularly in the context of what we do at World Pediatric Project. We work in a world that is focused on healing the children, and we believe that when we heal children, we change the world. And I want to tell you a little bit about that and then put it in the context of the central themes of this conference, which is around the one world, one humanity, and one future. So let's think about the context within which we're going, the big pictures. We know that 30% of the world's population are children, but they are 100% of our future. And when we consider that, then we need to address the issue of poverty, the issue of health, the issue of well-being, the issue of education for our children, because they are the future. Why is that important? Well, it's from those children that those like Gabriel Garcia Marquez will emerge, considered one of the most significant authors of the 20th century. Particularly in the Spanish language. He's from Colombia, and a significant impact on the way people think and the way people talk and their perspectives on particular subjects. From those children will emerge the likes of Richard St. Barbe Baker, one of the most significant characters in global forestation, known as Man of Trees. And so as we think about impacting the lives of children, we know that if we can take care of our children, if they're indeed 100% of our future, we believe that, then we know that they're going to become great parents, they're going to become great teachers, scientists, farmers, politicians, and everything that they do will be impacted into the future. And if we can impact the lives of children for 2 or 3 generations, then the world that we live in the 3rd or 4th generation will be significantly different than the world that we live in today. Let's talk a little bit about some of the global trends that we are seeing. We know that extreme poverty is on the decline. We know that basic education is on the rise. We know that literacy rates are improving significantly. Vaccinations are improving. We know that child mortality has been dropping significantly over the past 50 to 100 years. So certainly we're improving and things are moving in the right direction. But when we look at the absolute numbers, it is still significant. We've gone from more than 12 million child deaths in 1990 to about 5 million in 2020. That's a good trend. But there are still 5 million children that are dying in the world that we can have an impact on. When we look at the number of deaths that are by age category, we'll look at those that are under 5, you can see the column on the left, more than 5 million under 5. That's an entire generation. If you just move that column across to the right side, it's an entire generation that we are losing amongst our children, and the ripple effects of that in the world that we live in are quite stark. Where do we work as World Pediatric Project? We work in the tertiary space. If you look at the child healthcare world, there is the primary care, and then from there we have the secondary care, and then the tertiary care. That's where the most complex cases are. That's the most challenging cases of childcare are being addressed. And so for us, healing a child is tantamount to changing the world, because as we heal the children, then the emergence of great farmers and great scientists and great politicians and great parents will be enabled. Why is that important? Well, you look at the likes of Frida Kahlo in Mexico, who had polio at the age of 9. You look at Helen Keller, who suffered from scarlet fever, rubella, at 19 months of age, Desmond Tutu with tuberculosis, Mozart with smallpox. You look at George Washington, you know, diphtheria at 15, malaria at 17, smallpox at 19. So when we take care of the health and well-being of children, great personalities, great characters, great impact in the world can be born from that group of children. And yet when we look at the healthcare for children, and when we look at the tertiary space, the numbers are outrageous. I mean, we have 1.7 billion under the age of 19 that do not have access to surgical care. They do not have access to surgical care. And that's the space that we're addressing. Out of those, 450 million under the age of 5 don't have life-saving surgical care that can be provided to them. That's the space that we're working in, that we have carved out as critical, because it's high complexity, it is high touch, it is very difficult, it is difficult to scale it. Nevertheless, it is critical for the lives of the children and the future of their families and their communities that they live in. Because of that lack of access to surgical care, the number of deaths are 5 times greater than the total deaths comprised from HIV/AIDS, TB, and malaria. And in some of these under-resourced countries, if you look at under-resourced countries and the lack of access to surgical care, it's costing about $12.3 trillion in lost GDP. So there's not only a human toll, there's also an economic toll that needs to be addressed because of this lack of access to surgical care. So that's the space that we work in, that we have decided to focus on, the tertiary care of pediatrics. Our purpose is to elevate the human condition by enabling the sustainable transformation of access to advanced pediatric healthcare. It's important to think about this, right? Is elevating the human condition. How? Enabling the sustainable transformation. It has to be sustainable. It has to be transformational. And it's about access to that pediatric healthcare. We have worked traditionally in the Eastern Caribbean, in Central America, but as we begin to think about the world in a different way, and we begin to think about one community, one family, one ecosystem, then we have broadened our geographies. We're now working in the Caribbean. We're now working in Latin America. We're now expanding into what we call high proficiency, high disparity countries, where you have high proficiency of pediatric care, but you have high disparity, meaning that there is not a lot of access for the general population of children to that high proficiency. So thinking differently, thinking more globally, thinking about the world as one ecosystem, thinking about the world as one family, one heart, one mind, then begins to open up the opportunities and the possibilities for us to solve for this problem. So we're making that shift as an organization. We're moving from the regions, from the countries to the region. We're looking at the world, and ultimately we're going to be at a place where there is really one global identity, one governance structure, and a shared common purpose for one future. The way we're accomplishing that is while we're focusing our model on the direct care, the global networks, and capacity building. From a execution perspective, we've decentralized the organization. We're pushing the authority, decision-making, accountability into the regions. Our strategy, our resources, our programs are being community-led. We're certainly focused on building internal capacity, particularly the capacity to thrive in ambiguity. It's a different set of attributes when, conditions in one part of the world impact what we do. We have to be able to embrace that ambiguity and be able to learn the attributes and the skills necessary to function in that ambiguity so that we can achieve our common purpose. And we're certainly expanding our ecosystem in a different way. Traditionally, so what that meant traditionally for us is that for someone like Juan, who was suffering from scoliosis, 140-degree bend, he would have come to the United States in Philadelphia, done 3 surgeries. And you can see from the picture that at 140-degree bend, there is no room for your organs to grow. And so the prognosis is pretty bleak. And when he stood on a platform in Philadelphia after his surgeries and he began to breathe, he told his father that you see in the picture This must be how normal people feel when they breathe. I want to tell you how we have changed now. The story of Jose Daniel, he needed heart surgery because of cardiovascular condition that he was suffering from. So he went from Nicaragua with his mother to Spain. He didn't have to come to the United States, because there is high proficiency in Spain. There is high proficiency in many countries around the world. And therefore, it becomes important for us to think, where can we allocate our resources so that we can maximize the impact we're having? 2 open heart surgeries, a month and a half for him and his mother in Spain, back in Nicaragua, doing well. And the cost, cash outlay, was $1,500. I'm not talking about the in-kind contributions that were made, $1,500. That in the United States would have cost somewhere between $20,000 to $50,000. So if you can imagine that, because we are now thinking globally, we're set up the structure, the governance to think on a global basis, we now are looking at where can we have the greatest impact with the limited resources that we have been given. And that's how the change in thinking then demonstrates itself in the change in the decisions that we're making about addressing our purpose. I do want to tell you about Claudia in Honduras. She had no legs, suffered from scoliosis, about 110-degree bends, malformed hands. She had 2 surgeries, a walker, prosthetics, and she is now moving towards a totally different life than she had before, living on the farm on the hills of Honduras. It takes a lot for all of this to happen. So when you think about the impact we're having on the lives of children, and therefore they can get educated, they can graduate, they can have impact in their communities and in society at large, there's all of these people in different parts of the world that are coming together to help, whether it's the fundraising, the donors, whether it's the doctors, whether it's the surgeons and the anesthesiologists, the nurses, whether it's the volunteers. There is a global ecosystem that comes together to make all of this happen. And that's an important part of our culture. It's an important part of our mindset, and it's an important part of how we see moving towards one future where we're taking care of the children. And by virtue of focusing on that tertiary care, we're impacting their lives. And then as they grow up, they can impact the lives of their families and the life of their communities. And this is really how we focus on leveraging that global mindset and that global ecosystem to elevate the human condition in order to achieve our purpose. So again, I want to thank the organizers of the conference for inviting us to share with you a little bit about what we do and how we fit within the construct of the themes for the conference. And if there's one thing I'd like to leave you with, is the future of our children is the strategic imperative of our times. And so anything that we can do, anything that you can do to focus on the cause of children is of paramount significance. It is a ripple effect that will cause the winds to lift the human condition. Thank you.